Hello and welcome back. I'm Nicole, a cottage witch, and today I'm doing both a sort of summary of my first week of the Witch Sisters deck study and also Book Roast on YouTube and Instagram does this magical readathon every year. And it sort of runs the whole year now, but this part runs for April. So what she's done, and it used to be Harry Potter themed until J.K. Rowling went a bit off the rails there. But basically, there's a brief history. But you can pick your guild. So I've picked the Archivists, or you can, there's a quiz I think you could do as well. And then you can pick your calling, which is what you're going to study. And there's all sorts of options. So it's like it's sort of role-playing reading challenge. I don't know. You can play as yourself or another character. I just do it as an imaginary version of me. Like when it was Harry Potter, I would have been, you know, like the Ravenclaw version of me, you know, so that kind of thing. But so there's lots of these sort of career paths you can take and things you can study. And then in April and October, there are two different, can you see the bottom here? April and October, so the spring and fall equinoxes, there are month-long readathons, or reading challenges, whatever you want to call them. And so each of these career paths, or whatever you want to study, has a sort of reading list for spring and reading list for fall. So I think I'm going to go with the Wild Form Druid this month, which is a long reading list, but that's okay. And the fall one is more complicated because you need to get up to several levels in certain, sort of like the owls in Harry Potter, but she's made up her own new, like, she's really put a massive amount of work and thought and care into this whole system. It's really impressive. So if you've picked a guild, there's, what's it called? That forum, whatever that forum is called, I can't remember because I'm hardly ever on it, where you can chat with other people in your guild and compete against other guilds for number of pages read, number of books read, things like that. But then, so I don't really do that part. I just sort of do this part where it says these are the classes, and then she puts out a syllabus every year, or every spring and every fall. And so for each subject of study, there's a different course focus every time, and then a different reading prompt every time. Well, some of the reading prompts come back if they're, you know, sort of fan favorite prompts. And then she'll repeat, otherwise she'll come up with new ones. And so the reason I'm talking about this now is because I'm doing this month, but I'm doing it with the deck study. So a lot of these books are deck study books, not all of them. Like A Demon Haunted World has nothing to do with the deck study. And he probably wouldn't like the deck study, but whatever. So I've read a lot, but I'll get into those in a second. And then basically you just pick a book per prompt, so circle on the cover, Scottish myths and legends, that sort of thing. It's really fun, and there are things you can do throughout the year, like easier things, but April and I think it's October are the big readathons. So this has started now, and it's quite good fun. And she's got a lot of videos on her channel, which if I remember, I'll link them. Whoops. Technical difficulties. I'll link them down below and you can go have a look if you're so inclined. But it's good fun. Magical readathon sort of thing. So anyway, oh, I've got crumbs or something. Witch Sisters. So this is the first week of Lisa Pepez's deck study. And she posts prompts and things on YouTube and her Facebook, which I'm never on because I can't cope with Facebook. But I do the YouTube stuff and check the prompts and then just kind of do some of my own things. So in the rest of this video, I'll just sort of go over what I've read and looked up and stuff. And so it's divided into, I can't remember how many weeks this runs for, maybe 2 months? I can't remember. Anyway, for the first week, we've been looking at the first half of the majors, and then the second week is the second half. So I won't tell you what she actually wrote up or anything like that about them. But I will say, do I have them in order? No, I don't. That's okay. Oh, do I even have the guidebook here? No, it's in the other room. Okay. I'm not keeping the deck in order because I'm actually using it as we go, but the guidebook has these full-size color pictures, which are amazing, so that's cool. And so basically, starting at the beginning, mostly I focused on, and different people can focus on different things during the deck study, but I'm a plants person. If you're new here, if you're not, you probably already do that. And occasionally I'll look up some of the stuff about the animals as well, but so this one has thistles and what might be oats. So I've done a few different things. Actually, first, backtracking just a touch to a couple of the books I've read that are just sort of for overview. So I read The Celtic World by The Great Courses, which is a great overview of the Celtic world and how very not cohesive it is. Like, there's no... One of the reasons I like this deck is because it's so Scottish specific. There really is no universal... Oh, my computer just... There we go. There's no universal Celtic culture. That's not a thing that exists, and it doesn't seem like it ever existed. It's just not a thing. But so I appreciate the specificity of the Scottish one, and because I have Scottish and Irish ancestry, I tended to focus mostly on those. So the Celtic world was great because it starts with like the most ancient Celts that there's any sort of record of in Europe, and that's pretty cool. And tracks a couple of the theories for how they ended up in the British Isles and Ireland, and there's some debate about that apparently. But it's a really cool book, and touches on some like culture as well, music and art, and because that's partially in a culture that was mostly oral, that's how you trace a lot of things, you know, continuity wise. So that's been pretty cool. And then I read Celtic Mythology by Philip Freeman. Well, he was the translator. So these are basically, and these two were both on Audible. Actually, a lot of these were. And they're quite fun to listen to. So this one is sort of a collection of all sorts of Celtic myths, Irish, Scottish, Welsh as well. And so he starts with the earliest Celtic gods, the Book of Invasions, the Wooing of Etain, Cú Chulainn, tales from the Ulster cycle, stories from the Irish underworld, Finn the outlaw, the Mabinogi. The Mabinogi and the Welsh stories I was sort of less interested in, not because there's anything wrong with them, just because I have no Welsh heritage, and that's not sort of the area that I'm looking into. And then he does touch on the Christianization of some mythologies, so like St. Patrick, St. Bridget, St. Brennan? Something like that. I can't remember that one. Anyway, it was pretty interesting. And then, so in this book, Early Irish Myths and Sagas, there were, I made a checklist at the beginning, all but 2 of them were also in Celtic mythology. So I didn't reread all of them because I just read them. I may read this translation again sometime just because it's a different translation, so you get a sort of different feel for it. But the dreams of Angus and the labor pains of the Ullaid and the twins of Macha weren't in Celtic mythology. And they were pretty good. I liked the translation of this. It was good. A couple of those were in the Morrigan. So the Twins of Macha, I think that's in this one. This book on the Morrigan by Morgan Daimler. But it's definitely in another book of Morrigan that I listened to afterwards by Courtney Weber, which was okay. I liked this one better, personally. But yeah, it just, these 2 books sort of pull out those parts of these other myths that focus on the Morrigan. And so I'll get to that in a second. But, so yeah, those 2 I read from here. And then this book was one of my favorites. This is Scottish Myths and Legends. And it's really, I feel like it's more legends than myths, but it was fantastic, and you can listen to it on Audible as well. And he's got another book, which I will definitely get, called Irish Myths, The Children of Danu. So I definitely want it, because this is sort of, in the vein of less a translation and more a retelling. Oh yeah, and he's got one for Finn and the Fianna as well. Oh, I forgot this doesn't have a table of contents. That's annoying. So, but there is on Audible. You can check the table of contents in that you can skip from story to story. So it starts with the Kalia, so I like it immediately. But it's got a bunch of different folktales in it. Fox and Dog, that was a good one. Taming the Kelpie, that was also really good. What are these other ones? It's the Silky Wife. Silkies are one of those legends that have made it to Canada because so many Scots folks moved to the East Coast. Oh yeah, Pearlwort, I was gonna look up that plant. And Meadowsweet and Thyme. So I just marked a couple of the other plants that came up because I like that sort of thing. Anyway, it's fantastic. It's a lot of fun and very easy to read. And all of these books together sort of made me feel like there's no reason, really, other than, I guess, colonialism, that these books shouldn't be as well known and well loved as Greek or Roman myths or Norse myths. Like, there's just no good reason for that. They're just as fascinating. There's maybe less written material, so that's a challenge, but they're such good stories. And reading them, there are a couple. There's one that's a bit Hercules. I think that's Cool Colin. Although I might be mistaken. Anyway, there was somebody who did do a bunch of challenges. And there's some that are a bit Odyssey. And they're just so cool. And yeah, so I wish they were more well known because, like, I like Greek myths, but there's just the world is so much wider than that. So if Greek myths don't work for you, or if you just like myths generally, these are really fun to try. So yeah, then I read the books about the Morrigan. And this one is also one of these Pagan Portals book about the Kalia, which is excellent. And it sort of does the same thing. And I'd already read this one, but this Visions of the Kalia was the one I read this month. And it's kind of similar. It's in that it sort of has bits of where the Kalia features in myths from around Scotland, Ireland, England, Wales, and so on. And her different forms and her different theories about her origin, and other possible related figures. And so it was pretty interesting to read because there's all these sorts of yeah, she's associated with Nick Nevin at one point. And it's just so interesting, and I don't know, I mean, I know why English and French stories were the ones I grew up hearing, but it's really too bad that these ones aren't told more widely. But yeah, both Nick Nevin and the Kalia are associated with the mountain Ben Nevis. So that's pretty cool. And I just sort of tabbed other things of interest. One thing that this author did point out is that when you're talking about the malevolent versions of the Kalia, there are some that are the result of church propaganda. So that is something to keep in mind, which is not to say she's all sweetness and light prior to the church, because that's completely inaccurate. But the sort of versions that make her to be pure evil aren't accurate either. So there's got to be a bit of that taken into consideration. And sometimes the people who sometimes told these stories or transcribed them were monks who were not unbiased on this front. So anyway, those were pretty interesting. And then just as a sort of tangent, side quest, whatever, I listened to A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man by James Joyce, because I had listened to the Ulysses before, is what I'd listened to. Which, don't start with that one. It's good, but start with this one. It's much easier to get your head around. And this audiobook is read by Colin Farrell. And there's another one that I'm going to listen to this month, Dubliners, which is read by Andrew Scott. So that's fun. And they're both on Audible as well. And this isn't a walking advertisement for Audible either. I just use it a lot because you know, time is a factor, and I like reading, but I don't have enough time to just sit and read, so audiobooks. Anyway, so just for sort of, I don't know, atmosphere, I listened to that, and I loved it. It's such a musical book, and yeah, really, it's beautiful. I really enjoyed that. Okay, so then the next thing I did was I went through each, and Lisa Lopez has done more work on this front, going through each and listing out all the, like, all the named figures who appear in each, all the myths and stories that appear in each, all sorts of things. So I just focused on plants and animals, mostly. And so then for my Herbalism study deck, which it's just a deck that I've made for myself with different plants, I pulled out the ones that have like thistle and oats. That's a picture I need to retake because it's not mine. Well, take, full stop. So milk thistle I put as the nine of swords, but it appears in a lot of places in this deck. And, well, not milk thistle specifically, but just the Scotch thistle or various types of thistle. Apparently it's debatable which variety of thistle you're talking about. So then what I did is I've got these few other books. Oh yeah, so many books. Scottish Herbs and Fairy Lore, a Dictionary of Plant Lore, Ireland's Trees, and Scottish Witchcraft, that each have herbalism information. So, oh yeah, so this one has Cailleach and Bride, or Brigid, and Nick Nevin. Bone Mother, interesting. Yeah, so that's fun. But then there's a section in the middle where I would look up what thistle meant to, like, Scots folks, or what oats meant, or what they use them for. And sometimes it doesn't have any folklore bits in here. Sometimes it's just the herbal uses. Like with rose, I think it's just mostly herbal uses or to do with love or something. But yeah, it's mostly the herbal uses. Where is the tab for thistle? So yeah, roots of Scotch thistle used as a tea for catarrhal conditions, and then it tells you what to do with it. The flower of Scotland is an unofficial national symbol, although it might be the national symbol now. There is a story that's probably myth that a Danish invader stepped on a thistle as they were trying to surprise the Scots, and then warned the Scots, and the Scots won. So yeah, but it does talk about how it symbolizes strength and tenacity through adversity, thriving in the wild, damp landscape of Scotland. And I've never been to Scotland, but I would love to go. So I did a lot of that. There are animals in here, so are the animals, are they at the back? Probably. Yeah. Deer. Oh yeah, she's got a recipe for staghorn jelly in here, which I will pass on. Thank you very much. And this is, the deer or stag in Scotland is older than the Celts. It was apparently seen on Pictish stones. But yeah, so this book says, in stories, deer often lure heroes to the other world. And the white deer symbolized something else altogether, something more spiritual, I think. And various people transformed into deers. The Cailleach was the protector of deer in Scotland and cows in Ireland, because the deer cult, or whatever it may have been, I think was more specific to Scotland, because there used to be more of them. And so then I looked at things up in this book, A Dictionary of Plant Lore. This book was a bit disappointing, I have to say, because it says British and Irish plant lore since the 1880s, but really it's mostly English. Like, there are some other bits that are not specifically English. Let's see if thistle has any. Yeah, Scotch thistle and Northern Ireland. Thistle-headed pins. Ooh, Norse thistle brooches. Cool. I'd wear a thistle brooch, but I'm a dork, so, you know, don't take fashion tips from me. Yeah, so it talks about the historical associations between thistle in Scotland. King George IV's visit to Scotland, apparently he got thistle seeds, so cool. So on that one it does have, but on others, it's so very English. I think for Rowan it's all English, which is unfortunate. So I couldn't use this book to learn more about Rowan in terms of its Scottish association with oak is all English as well. Hazel, did Hazel have anything that was Scottish? I don't think so. I think it was just the thistle that did. So, I don't know. This book is only so-so in that regard. Oh, Welshman, okay. But otherwise just English. But then, so I'll use this Scottish witchcraft book first. What did I mark in here? She's got Scottish folklore of death and dying, which is pretty interesting. Different traditions and things. Some of the things she says about Pictish traditions I think are probably conjecture, because I'm very skeptical as to how much anybody actually knows about that. Healing and protection stones, hagstones, she talks about those, which make an appearance later in the deck, so I'll come back to this for that. And then thistle. Hey, I love thistle. I know people don't like thistles because they can get invasive, but some of them are also medicinal, like milk thistle. So, you know, I plant it in a container and catch all the seeds before it, or cut the flower off before it goes to seed, but so you do have to be a bit careful, but it's quite a lovely plant. Protection for your house, yes. To ward off the evil eye and protect. Great as a tonic, as milk thistle clears out the liver from toxins and alcohol. Yeah, I think that's what I've read in other books. Let's check. Yeah, bitter stomachic, good for gallbladder, spleen, and jaundice. Milk thistle. Cool. You can also cook it, apparently, which I've never done, like spinach, but you have to take off the spikes first, so I think in that case I'd rather just grow spinach. There are a few other plants in here that we go to later in the deck. And then for things like oak that I couldn't find in some of these other books, I went to Ireland's trees, Myths, Legends, and Folklore, because it was the closest I could get. So, where's oak here? And this book is pretty cool because it's got folk beliefs and customs. Used for kindling the bonfires or need fires of May and Midsummer in Scotland and Wales. Cool. Scottish custom involved the toasting of a bannock on the St. Michael's Eve on a fire of rowan or oak wood. Tasty. I'm all in favor of that. Scots Gaelic poem of oak being as of the sun. It does have, actually all of the trees, the rowan, hazel, and oak, all have very sunny, summery connotations. Some stuff about Wales. In Scotland, a Highlander would draw a circle around himself with an oak sapling to protect himself from the Fae. Cool. Cuchulainn writes a piece of ogham on an oak sapling and twists it around a standing stone to hinder the armies of Maeve. My Celtic language's pronunciation is abysmal, so apologies for that forever. And then it's got some more legends and stuff, because, well, Pliny did write about the Gauls, but this was more like mainland Europe Gauls. So whether that held true for the Irish or the Scottish, it's kind of debatable. And also trying to distinguish between pre-Christian and Christian significance is difficult. The oak is a symbol of kinship, because of its connotations of strength and fertility. It means chief in Irish, the word for oak. Cool. County Kildare, closely associated with kingship. That's not surprising. Yeah, and so I won't go through the entire book for every plant because that would be here all day, and the author would not probably like that for copyright reasons, but it's a really fun book. Oh, the oak and the bull are linked in some folktales. Cool. A Scots Gaelic rhyme states that the Carrion oaken staff produces heat in cattle. Interesting. And then it talks a bit about the uses of oak, which is of somewhat less interest to me. So basically that's what I did for all the things, which took a while. I wasn't sure if this was a dead stag. It seems like it might be, but if it's not, I don't know. And I wasn't entirely sure what these plants were either. For Nick Nevin, I did want to look up it says her association with Halloween traditions, but I haven't been able to find that yet in any of the other books that I've got. So if you know anything about that, let me know. And this wasn't listed in the description, but these are wild roses all throughout, which I know because we've got tons of them here, and I adore them. They're phenomenal plants. I mean, you know, maybe don't mess with them, but on the other hand, if you're sensible to them, so it sort of works for the Queen of Elfing, you know, if you're not reckless and go ripping things off of them, you can have a good relationship. So that's that. The Tree of Life for the Emperor. I like this one. It's got a wild rose again. This book did remind me, so where did it say in here? Oh yeah, it said that in ancient Ireland, when a tribe cleared land to build a settlement, they would leave the oldest, strongest tree as a center to hold the life of the tribe, which reminded me of the book The Mother Tree, which I'll link below if you've never read that. It's really good. It's the scientist who started out, her family started out in the forestry industry, logging, and then she became a scientist studying the mycorrhizal networks underneath trees. And one of her big things is the mother and grandmother trees do need to be left there to because they feed all the plants around it, and the little saplings that might grow in place of the ones you've cut down would really struggle in that soil without the help of the mother tree. So that's really interesting to me. The salmon of knowledge do appear a lot. Actually, salmon appear a lot in a lot of Scottish legends, eating various things from rings to hazelnuts. Didn't look up squirrels, couldn't find much about those, although we do have them all over town here. This is beautiful. I love this hierophant. Rowan and thistle. So I'd looked those up already, but let me look up rowan in here real quick. See if it had said anything interesting. Laxative, good for sore throats, rich in vitamin C. Lovely. This is one of those plants that I want to get to know, so I want to add it to my Herbalism study tarot deck. That's one of this spring projects. And you can make syrups and jams with them, which I've never done, but there's a recipe for rowan berry jam in here. Am I too far down? No. Okay. And also I want to make a rowan berry charm with the berries and red thread sometime this summer when the berries are a bit, I mean, it snowed yesterday, so we're not there yet. We got a ways to go. Food of the two of the den, and yeah, I wouldn't be careless with a rowan tree either. You gotta, you know, respect the trees. So that's pretty cool, rowan and thistle. Probably I'd relate more to the thistle myself. Crows and birds. Okay, so one of the things I didn't do, because I have less interest than some people, is look up the stories of people accused of witchcraft, like Isabel Gowdy. Whether she was actually a witch, I don't know. She might have been, but so many of the people accused weren't, and were just confessed under torture. that I tend to find their stories really unreliable. Because mostly they just said what the church told them to say under torture, which is not a reliable source of information. So I didn't look up much about those. But, I mean, this does remind me a lot of Morgan for Flight. Well, the Morgans, all of them do, and quite a lot of figures actually in Irish and Scottish mythologies do a lot of shapeshifting. There's a lot of shapeshifting. Cornstalks, yeah. So I looked up haddock. That's a cornstalk, straw, or rush, and I'd probably use rushes because corn would have been a relatively recent arrival to the UK. Wildcat I couldn't find in any of my books, which is unfortunate because it sounds pretty cool. Oh, and I didn't know what these feathers were. I wish I did. Oh well, or these birds actually. So I didn't look up. Did I look up Gormsville? Yeah, I did. But she also doesn't appear in any of these books of like, because I guess these books are older legends, and some of the more people known for witchcraft are more recent, relatively. Like, they're still old to us, but more recently. Oh yeah, and I forgot to get my spindle now. I should do some spinning lately. So I've got, whoops, a couple of spindles here. This one is about as full as I want to get it, because it gets heavier the more yarn you spin. But this is my favorite spindle. It's so beautiful. I can't remember what kind of wood this is, but it's a really, really well made spindle, and I love it. So yeah, just a quick detour there to show off my pretty spindles. So I do love this for the I do love this for the Wheel of Time, or the Wheel of Time, the Wheel of Fortune. It's a good one. And spinning and weaving are both frequently seem to make appearances in various mythologies to do with fates, so that's cool. Crows and ravens, the Morgan. Yeah, so this is where the Morgan came in. Now, am I past, or was this the last one we were supposed to do this time? Yeah. So it talks about, did it talk about crows here? Yeah, and I can't remember if it talks about ravens as well. But she's known for her association with both, and for transforming into either. So that's pretty cool. Let's just see in this book here if there's crows. Nope. There must be something on ravens though. Surely. Oh, maybe there was a different bird section. I think that was it. Hang on. Sacred birds. There we go. Whoops. The heron isn't in here, which is too bad, because she's associated with, or the heron is associated with the Cailleach. Because in some stories, the Cailleach transforms into a heron. Hooded crow, yes. The raven is a sign of death. Ravens are associated with goddesses of war, such as the Morrigan, the Great Queen. I prefer her name of the Nightmare Queen, personally, because I can relate to that more than the Great Queen. But, yeah. Triple goddess, yes. The washer at the ford, yep. Although there is a fun story too about the Cailleach. I can't remember what that whirlpool is called, that's off the coast of either Ireland or Scotland, but it's the terrifying one. And apparently that was the Cailleach washing her laundry, and it made a whirlpool. But the washer at the ford is a sort of banshee equivalent, where it foretells death, either to the person who sees it or to somebody they know. Anything else? Some stuff about Gaul, Welsh information. The Druids prophesied the future by observing the movements of ravens, their flights, and their calls. The Cailleach occasionally did know the future, but only occasionally. The Morrigan does. There's one version of her, I think it's Bev, who knows more about seership than the others. or is associated more with that, I think, if I'm recalling correctly. Actually, let me find. See if it's in here. Readily available. It might not be. Actually, did I tab them? No. Oh yeah, I've added a couple more books to my reading list because of course I did. Oh yeah, Bev, pronunciation, sorry. Goddess of Prophecy. So these are the three Morgu, Maka, and Bev that are sort of the main figures associated with the name the Morrigan, but there are other possibilities. So yeah, it was pretty cool, and this book was pretty interesting as well. So yes, ravens, the hooded crow, which is just a variety of crow in the British Isles. Wolves as well, that was pretty cool, that she's associated with wolves. That doesn't come up as much in mythology for some reason as ravens. Eels and snakes. Eels come up a lot, actually. And cows. Did she look after cows as well? Associated, owning magical cows, yes, okay. In the form of a cow. So she shapeshifts a lot. It makes it really hard to pin her down, this character of the Morrigan. Because there are just so many different examples in different stories where she appears as different beings. But that's kind of what makes it interesting. Like, if you knew everything about something, would it still be interesting? I don't know. Maybe not. So anyway, that was the first week of study. Next week I will not be reading quite so many because I've read some of these now, and we'll just use them as reference for the next batch of the majors. Oh, a couple other books that I want to read so having read these, I want to read more by Morgan Daimler because she seems interesting, and she's American, but she's well respected apparently by Irish pagans. So she's got a book about the Sidhe, well, several. Another one about the Morrigan, going deeper with Morgan. It's called Raven Goddess. Oh, and she's got a memoir, Where the Hawthorn Grows, an American Druid's Reflections. So I might read that as well. And then, of course, this Irish mythology, The Children of Danu by Daniel Ellison. I'll definitely get that. And then just for fun, I added poems to my list. It's a book, I don't know if you've ever heard of her on Instagram, but there's an author called Len Penny, and she does the Scots Word of the Day. And she's got a book now out of poems that's half in English and half in Scots. And so I might try that because it sounds like it could be fun. It's not directly related, but you know, sort of the same as I was doing with Joyce, just for atmosphere. So anyway, oh, the one other thing I did was I got this Archetypes, the Wild Unknown Archetypes mini. And as soon as I saw the Shapeshifter one, I was like, oh, well, that's familiar. So between the Morrigan and the Cailleach, which seem to have been the figures I've read the most about this month so far, just for fun, I went through and pulled out the cards that reminded me the most of the Cailleach specifically. So the storm, because there's a lot of lore around the Cailleach and weather. Predicting the weather, sometimes controlling the weather, sometimes creating the weather. The creator, she is known as a sort of land spirit that creates the landscape as well, which is pretty cool, like throwing boulders to create mountains and valleys and that sort of thing. The flame, because of the myths of, oh, there was one thing in here between the Cailleach and Pui, and I had a hard time finding information about that. Where is that? Oh, that's not till later. So maybe I'll talk about that next time. But yeah, the Cailleach is known for either changing into Bridget in the spring or having her powers fade and Bridget's powers increase. Or she has Bridget as a captive in the winter and she escapes or is released in spring, something like, there are a lot of variations, but so that's sort of this dual seasonal situation. But yeah, the shapeshifter, the storm, the mountain, the sword. There are a lot of battles in Irish myth, but they're not like Roman type battles. Like, they're not fully, everybody gets dressed up in their fancy armor and lines up in a row with horses and charges at the other people who are also lined up in a row. It's not that. It's more like cattle raids and things. Which is part of the reason why, at least in Ireland, cattle made so many appearances, because it was so central to people's lives. And the Cailleach and the Morrigan both at various times guarded people's cattle or stole them, depending on the day and the mood and whether somebody had annoyed them enough that they needed correction, I guess you could say. So anyway, it's been a really fun week of delving into Scottish and Irish and a tiny bit of Welsh mythology. I'm really glad I read some of these old books, like the Book of Invasions, the readathon, and even the Mabinogi, which is Welsh, because they're just so foundational, I guess, to all these stories. And because I think some of them have been written down for the longest, whereas some of these other folk tales and things are more oral traditions, which I think is still perfectly valid. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with oral traditions. I don't think they're lesser than written traditions. They're just, it's a different way of holding on to and taking care of and passing along information. But it does mean that, you know, once Christianity arrived, certain things became harder to hang on to. Or were in secret, or were changed a lot. There was a lot of modification. So yeah, that was my first week of both this readathon and the deck study. It's been fun. Hopefully this video was interesting. I don't know if it was, but that was sort of what I've been doing. I'll wander over to Lisa Pepez's YouTube post and see if anybody else posts there what they've been doing, because that would be pretty cool too. Yeah, so that's all for now. If you've made it to the end, thank you very much, and I'll see you again next time.